Friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie It Ends With Us in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is It Ends With Us. So, we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch It Ends With Us film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining, so you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So let's start the video. It Ends With Us is a 2024 American romantic drama film directed by Justin Baldoni from a screenplay by Christy Hall, based on the 2016 novel by Colleen Hoover. The film stars Blake Lively alongside Baldoni, Brandon Sklenar, Jenny Slate, and Hassan Minhaj. The story follows florist Lily Bloom, Lively, whose abusive relationship with neurosurgeon Ryle Kincaid, Baldoni, is compounded when her ex-boyfriend, Atlas Corrigan, Sklenar, re-enters her life. Principal photography on It Ends With Us took place from mid-2023 to early 2024, with pauses due to the 2023 WGA strike and the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. It Ends With Us had its premiere at the AMC Lincoln Square in New York City on August 6, 2024, and was released by Sony Pictures Releasing in the United States on August 9th. The film received mixed reviews from critics, but was a box office success, grossing $351 million worldwide against a $25 million budget. The production became mired in controversy due to disputes between Lively and Baldoni, with the former drawing criticism for not addressing the film's themes of domestic violence and emotional abuse during its promotional tour, as well as using the tour to promote her hair care range. In December 2024, Lively filed a lawsuit against Baldoni and his production company Wayfarer Studios, accusing them of sexual harassment and intimidation. Denying the allegations, Baldoni sued the New York Times for libel over their siding with Lively's account of events, and later sued Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist Leslie Sloan for civil extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy. Plot: Lily Bloom delivers a eulogy at her father, Andrew's, funeral. From the podium, she announces that she will list 5 of her favorite things about him. After standing in silence for several seconds, she walks off. Back home in Boston, she meets neurosurgeon Ryle Kincaid. They flirt until he is called away for emergency surgery. While renovating the building that will become her flower shop, Lily meets Elisa. She hires Elisa and learns that she is Ryle's sister. At Elisa's birthday party, Ryle tells Lily that he is infatuated with her. They kiss, but she declines to sleep with him, saying that he is only interested in casual sex, whereas she wants a relationship. She spends the night at his apartment and accepts his invitation to date him the next morning. Ryle convinces her to introduce him to her mother, Jenny, at a new restaurant called Root. There, Lily discovers that the owner and head chef is her former boyfriend, Atlas Corrigan. Flashbacks reveal that Andrew had physically abused Jenny and that Lily had found Atlas living in an empty house next door after he had run away from his mother's abusive boyfriend. They fell in love, and upon finding them in bed together, Andrew severely beat Atlas. Atlas joined the Marines. One morning, Ryle burns his hand while cooking breakfast for Lily. When she tries to help, he slaps her, but he immediately apologizes, insisting that it was an accident. While Ryle, Lily, Elisa, and her husband Marshall are dining at Root, Atlas notices Lily's bruised eye and Ryle's bandaged hand. He confronts Lily, imploring her to leave Ryle. When Ryle finds them together, he assumes the worst and a physical altercation breaks out, culminating in Atlas ejecting Ryle. Atlas visits Lily's shop, gives her his phone number, and tells her to call him if she ever needs to. Lily confides in Ryle that her father abused her mother. While visiting Elisa and Marshall in a hospital after the birth of their daughter, Lily accepts Ryle's proposal of marriage. Soon after, they elope. Ryle later finds Atlas's phone number hidden in Lily's phone case. During an ensuing argument, Ryle pushes Lily down the stairs. He later claims that she fell and that he tried to catch her. Atlas is interviewed by a local magazine, telling them that he named his restaurant in Lily's honor. In a jealous rage, Ryle tries to rape Lily. She escapes and seeks out Atlas, who takes her to a hospital where she discovers that she is pregnant. Lily stays with Atlas for a few days, during which time he reveals that he had planned to kill himself on the night she found him, but that she had inspired him to carry on living. When Lily opens up to Elisa about Ryle's treatment of her, Elisa reveals that, as a child, Ryle had accidentally shot and killed their brother, Emerson, which led to unresolved trauma manifesting as uncontrollable bouts of rage. She insists that Lily does not take Ryle back. Lily moves out, but Ryle implores her to return, promising to seek help and stop the abuse. Lily gives birth to a daughter, whom they name Emerson. She tells Ryle that she wants a divorce, and he initially resists, but eventually agrees when she asks him how he would react if their daughter were to be abused by a partner. Lily hopes that she has broken the cycle of abuse in her family and tells her daughter, "It ends with us." Months later, Lily and Jenny take Emerson to visit Andrew's grave, where Lily leaves a blank eulogy on his headstone. She meets Atlas at the farmer's market. She tells him that she is no longer with Ryle, and they smile at each other. Cast: Blake Lively as Lily Bloom, Isabella Ferrer as young Lily, Justin Baldoni as Ryle Kincaid, Jenny Slate as Elisa, Brandon Sklenar as Atlas Corrigan, Alex Neustetter as young Atlas Production. In July 2019, Justin Baldoni optioned the novel for a film adaptation to be produced through his Wayfarer Studios company. In January 2023, Blake Lively was cast in the role of Lily Bloom. Baldoni, who plays Ryle Kincaid, also signed on as director, with Christy Hall adapting the script in April 2023. Brandon Sklenar was cast to play the role of Atlas. Principal photography began in Hoboken, New Jersey on May 5, 2023, with shooting taking place along 10th and Bloomfield Streets. The production took over Field Colony, a workspace and art gallery, for 6 weeks, transforming it into a cafe, then Lily Bloom's florist shop. In mid-May 2023, filming moved to Chatham, New Jersey, where scenes were shot at Fairmount Cemetery. Later that same month, Hassan Minhaj was announced to have joined this cast. The next month, production had to temporarily pause due to the 2023 WGA strike. Just over half of the film was completed when production shut down. The production was still on hold when the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike began on July 14, 2023. Filming resumed in the Newport neighborhood of Jersey City, New Jersey on January 5, 2024. That same month, Isabella Ferrer and Alex Neustetter joined the cast as the younger versions of Lily and Atlas, respectively. Music: main article It Ends With Us soundtrack. Rob Simonson and Duncan Blickenstaff composed the film's score. Madison Gate Records released the soundtrack, coinciding with the film's theatrical release date. Controversies: main article It Ends With Us controversy. Marketing: during her promotional tour for the film, Lively received criticism from social media users who accused her of being tone-deaf for displaying a lighthearted, humorous attitude and not explicitly addressing her character's experience of domestic violence and abuse. Users were also critical of Lively for promoting her new hair care line, as well as her alcoholic drinks brand during the press tour, and for encouraging moviegoers to wear floral clothes, which some deemed insensitive to the film's messaging surrounding domestic violence. Following the criticism, Lively posted to her Instagram story in support of victims of intimate partner violence and shared a link to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Bridget Stumpf of The Hollywood Reporter wrote on the issue, "By glossing over its domestic violence content in the film's marketing, and by not providing any content warnings prior to the start of the film, It Ends With Us ultimately fails the survivors it is supposed to advocate for." Conflict between Lively and Baldoni's sources told The Hollywood Reporter that an alleged conflict formed between Lively and Baldoni during post-production after the film underwent a week of reshoots, and Lively commissioned a second cut of the film from editor Shane Reed. Reed had previously worked on the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) film Deadpool and Wolverine 2024, starring Lively's husband Ryan Reynolds, and the Lively-directed Taylor Swift music video I Bet You Think About Me. The edit used in theaters, reportedly the version Lively preferred, was credited to Una Flaherty and Rob Sullivan. In addition, the publication confirmed that Reynolds wrote a large chunk of the dialogue for a scene set on a roof, allegedly in April 2023 before the WGA strike, which Baldoni was not told of. Speculation about the alleged rift grew on platforms such as TikTok, where the book was massively popular among the book talk subcommunity in videos that noted Baldoni's absence from joint press events. In August 2024, Baldoni hired public relations crisis manager Melissa Nathan. Sources told Variety that while they would not articulate any legitimate transgressions from either party, that the bad blood between the two is very real and the relationship may not be salvageable. Sexual harassment and defamation, legal action. On December 20th, 2024, Lively filed a legal complaint with the California Civil Rights Department accusing Baldoni, producer Jamey Heath, and their studio Wayfarer of creating a hostile work environment and retaliating against her for reporting misconduct. According to the filings, she claimed Baldoni had improvised unwanted kissing and discussed his sex life. Heath had shown her a video of his wife giving birth naked, and both men repeatedly entered her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding, among other inappropriate actions. Documents obtained by Lively via subpoena claim to show that Baldoni and his agents ran a public relations campaign to damage her reputation, which involved social media manipulation, planting negative stories, and amplifying criticism of her. Lively alleged that this was done in retaliation for her raising concerns and seeking protections on set. Lively's complaint, though filed privately, was published the following day in the New York Times expose by Megan Twohey, Mike McIntyre, and Julie Tate, under the title "We Can Bury Anyone: Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." Baldoni was dropped by the talent agency WME in response to the allegations and reporting. He denied the allegations through his lawyer. The following day, Baldoni's publicist stated that his PR team had sophomorically reveled in the Lively coverage, yet although we were prepared, we didn't have to do anything over the top to protect our client. Lively's civil rights complaint also named businessman Steve Sarowitz, a co-founder of Wayfarer Studio, Jed Wallace and his company Street Relations Inc., crisis manager Melissa Nathan, and her company, the agency group PR LLC, and publicist Jennifer Abel and her company RWA Communications. She also filed a lawsuit against the same, except Wallace and Street Relations, alleging sexual harassment, planned public smear campaign, and causing her emotional distress. Baldoni's former publicist Stephanie Jones also filed a defamation lawsuit which alleged that her former employee Jennifer Abel and crisis communications manager Melissa Nathan attempted to cover up Baldoni's on-set behavior while It Ends With Us was being filmed. Jones' lawsuit also alleged that efforts were made to undermine her reputation. On December 31st, 2024, Baldoni and the other plaintiffs responded with a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times, saying that the newspaper had defamed them by publishing cherry-picked and altered communications, which were stripped of necessary context and deliberately spliced to mislead. His team produced alleged documents, claiming the texts published between Abel and Nathan had been taken out of context and omitted crucial texts and emojis from the full discussion. The legal filing also produced Lively's alleged text to Baldoni, one of which invited him in while she was pumping in my trailer. Brian Friedman, Baldoni's attorney in the lawsuit against the New York Times, in an interview with Megyn Kelly, suggested that they were planning to sue Lively into oblivion and sue several others in the case as well, including Stephanie Jones and Ryan Reynolds. Friedman alleged that Reynolds' character of Nice Pool in Deadpool and Wolverine was based on Baldoni, given their nearly identical hairstyle and jokes in regards to Lively's Lady Pool character and her baby. On January 16, 2025, Baldoni filed a lawsuit against Lively, Reynolds, and Leslie Sloan, Lively's PR representative, alleging extortion, defamation, and breach of contract, seeking at least $400 million in damages. On January 23rd, Lively's legal team filed a gag order against Friedman, accusing him of continuing to engage in a smear campaign against Lively by repeatedly revealing information to the press. Release. It Ends With Us premiered at the AMC Lincoln Square in New York City on August 6, 2024. The film was originally set to be released theatrically in the United States on February 9, 2024 and June 21, 2024. But the release date was pushed back to August 9, 2024. It was released earlier on August 7 in Belgium, Finland, the Philippines, and Sweden. It Ends With Us was released on VOD on September 24, 2024, and was released on Blu-ray and DVD on November 5, 2024. It became available to stream starting on December 9th on Netflix. Reception. Box office. It Ends With Us grossed $148.5 million in the United States and Canada. and $202.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $351 million. Deadline Hollywood calculated the film's net profit as $207 million, accounting for production budgets, marketing, and other costs, box office grosses, merchandise, television and streaming, and home media revenues, placing it sixth on their list of 2024's most valuable blockbusters. In the United States and Canada, It Ends With Us was released alongside Borderlands and Cuckoo, and was projected to gross $23 to $30 million in its opening weekend, with some estimates going as high as $40 to $50 million. The film made $24 million on its first day, including $7 million from Thursday night previews. It went on to debut to $50 million, finishing second behind holdover Deadpool and Wolverine. It marked the first time since 1990 that two films separately starring a married Hollywood couple, in this case It Ends With Us star Blake Lively and Deadpool and Wolverine star Ryan Reynolds, occupied the number 1 and 2 spots at the box office simultaneously, and the first time two films grossed at least $50 million in the same weekend in the month of August. In its second weekend, the film made $23.8 million, a drop of 52.4%, finishing in third. The film crossed $100 million domestically on August 19th after 11 days in theaters. It ended its theatrical run after 3 months. Critical response. Reception of the film from critics was mixed. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 55% of 190 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 5.6 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, "Earnestly performed if marred by clunky dialogue, It Ends With Us is surprisingly at its most graceful when handling the more provocative elements of its melodramatic source material." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 53 out of 100, based on 42 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it an 85% positive score, with 69% saying they would definitely recommend it. Wendy Eide of The Observer gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, writing, "For a film that dips its Manolo-clad toe into the murky waters of domestic abuse, it's unexpectedly aspirational, almost frothy in tone." The Globe and Mail's Johanna Schneller praised Lively's performance, writing, "Beyond nailing Lily's exact shade of auburn hair, funky, sexy dress, and vision notebook stuffed with flowers, she also conveys her luminousness and strength, and reminds you how pleasurable it can be to watch a romantic thriller." Kevin Maher of The Times gave it 4 out of 5 stars, calling it a glossy, sometimes soapy, but always compelling adaptation. Hannah Jorgis of The Atlantic was more critical, writing, "To young people who have become inured to the misery of modern life, there's a seductive premise in these novels. Relentless suffering can give way to freedom, and hot sex, if women want it badly enough. On screen, performed by real people, it's not as convincing." The Sydney Morning Herald's reviewer Sandra Hall gave the film 2.5 out of 5 stars, saying that it was packed with erotic cliches overlaid with a rolling soundtrack of pop hits that include songs by Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey, and called the dialogue risible. Potential sequel. In August 2024, following the release of the film, director Justin Baldoni acknowledged the potential for a film adaptation of the sequel novel, It Starts With Us. However, he later stated that he might not return in his role as director, suggesting that Blake Lively direct the film instead. Baldoni's Wayfarer Studios holds the rights to It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us after acquiring them in 2019. It Ends With Us review. Arriving as counter-programming to her husband's No One Marvel skit, Deadpool and Wolverine, Blake Lively's glossy and often rather graceful romantic drama, It Ends With Us is also trying to appeal to a powerful and vocal fan base. 2 of them, in fact, just one more obviously than the other. It's based on the bestseller by Colleen Hoover, a self-published phenom who rose to ubiquity thanks in part to the rapidity of book talk and also a COVID-inspired rise in escapist forms of reading at home. Her novels have sold over more than 20 million copies worldwide, with It Ends With Us being the most popular. Her female fans are so intense that Hoover, known as Coho, sells branded press-on nails, quote-covered sweatshirts, and character-inspired earrings. Her followers are known as the Cohort, of course. Hoping for a 50 Shades adjacent hit, rights were smartly snapped up for an inevitable adaptation. And it's one that's also been cleverly marketed to another, even more intense and financially powerful group of fans: Swifties. It's led by Lively, one of the singer's best and most photographed alongside friends, announced by a trailer soundtracked by one of her songs and filled with enough nods to make it feel like it's some sort of officially licensed fanfic. Long hair, lumberjack shirts, fall colors, that aforementioned song playing almost in full near the end. It's a neat act of synergy. Another endorsement post is surely on the way, and is one of many reasons why It Ends With Us is likely to be a major late summer smash. The cold calculations being described here betray what's a surprisingly compassionate and moving throwback, both to so-called women's movies of the 1940s and 50s and slick female-led studio fare of the 90s. It's initially hard to know how one should take a film focused on a florist named Lily Blossom Bloom, but Daddy-O writer Christy Hall's script boasts a sharp and much-needed self-awareness, taking a similar and superior tack to Kelly Marcel and Patrick Marber's loose take on 50 Shades of Grey. It's a difficult balance, taking source material seriously, while also understanding that a new, less attached, and far broader audience will encounter it with understandable questions and cynicism. But Hall does such a good job that one can see Hoover avoiding an E.L. James-style split for the inevitable sequel. It won't be ending here. Lively's Bloom is a woman grappling with the recent death of an abusive father she can't quite muster up any real grief for, diverting her attention to opening a flower shop, a long-time dream that's finally becoming a reality. When she meets commitment-phobic neurosurgeon Ryle Kincaid, Jane the Virgin's Justin Baldoni, also directing, she thankfully takes a minute to ridicule his name, and then finds herself falling for him, both of their carefully built-up walls breaking down. But a random reunion with her childhood sweetheart, Atlas, Brandon Sklenar, reminds her of a past she left behind and serves as a wake-up call to a present that's far darker than she realizes. It's a plot of hackneyed soap tropes, but there's a real maturity to how it unfolds. A story of abuse that's far less obvious than we've grown accustomed to. The details far naughtier than some might be comfortable with. There are expected cliches, but there are also many that are mercifully avoided too. The story not always conforming to type. Baldoni's direction is big and shiny. He makes the film's 25 now-enders look like double that. Filled with perfectly lit restaurants and perfectly styled outfits. A cast of handsome people living handsome lives. Yet Hall's dialogue, while often a little too simplistic, is rooted and believable, and so the heightened world isn't difficult for us to buy into, and the emotional impact isn't difficult for us to feel affected by. Taken with 2015's Age of Adeline, an underrated high-concept sleeper of equally grand sentiment, Lively seems determined to reintroduce the kind of melodrama that we haven't seen an awful lot of in recent years, or at least we haven't seen it done as well as it is here. She's a warm and instinctive performer and has distinct, effective chemistry with her two male leads. A younger version of her character, played by Isabella Ferrer, is an eerily perfect physical choice, as well as with her best friend, played by a winning Jenny Slate. The life lessons being taught here about self-acceptance, self-love, and self-worth might be a little pat, and some of the darker elements could have afforded a tad more darkness, but It Ends With Us leads with heart first, everything else later. It's a film of huge, sometimes hugely unsubtle emotion, but it has an effectively forceful sweep to it. It Ends With Us review. Soap opera is a term that conjures cliché images. In hindsight, it's a rather sexist phrase like the studio system category of women's pictures. Soap operas have always dealt, at times in depth, with women's experiences. When the phrase came into vogue in the 1960s, soap operas were what housewives watched on network television in the afternoon. I'd watch my mother get absorbed into them. One of the many ways that they were unfairly sneered at is that the culture gave no credibility to the fact that soap operas were a serial form, which allowed them to slip into the nuances of a dramatic situation. Sure, they featured broad acting and a certain mannequin model handsomeness and beauty, yet they gripped people, mostly women, because there was something vital and alive in them. It Ends With Us is an overripe saga of love and romance that is also about some very serious dark things. But when I say it's a soap opera, I mean that as praise. Based on Colleen Hoover's 2016 novel, the script is by Christy Hall, and directed by Justin Baldoni, who is one of the film's co-stars, It's an avid and emotional movie that pulls you right along. If you go in not knowing what it's about and are therefore all the more surprised by where it goes, it may be even more effective. That's true of most movies, but in a soap opera, the plot is all. The twists you didn't see coming, the ones that reveal life to be an improvised drama of fate. The film star, Blake Lively, has not made the impact in movies that she did on television with Gossip Girl, though she had a hit with the shark thriller The Shallows, and was very good in Ben Affleck's The Town and Oliver Stone's Savages. But in It Ends With Us, she has a role she can sink her acting chops into. She fills the screen with her acutely aware and slightly tremulous radiance. She plays Lily Bloom, an aspiring flower shop entrepreneur who we meet when she returns home for the funeral of her father, who, during the eulogy, she can't think of one nice thing to say about. She's got a list numbered to 5, all left blank. So there's a forbidding backstory there. Then, on a Boston apartment rooftop, sitting on the edge of it actually, she meets one of the building's residents, a self-styled stud named Ryle Kincaid. He seems, in a way, to be a figure out of soap opera central casting. He's a neurosurgeon, tall, dark, and dashing, with coal-black eyes that have a light in them. And he's got a gift of gab that's smooth and aggro and charming. Justin Baldoni is of Jewish and Italian descent, and he comes on like Sacha Baron Cohen, playing a sexier version of Abby Hoffman. We already see red flags. Ryle walks onto the roof, angrily throwing a chair. But the complication that lures us is that he in the movie put the main red flag right out there. "Love isn't for me," says Ryle. "Lust is nice, though." So he's a player, and what we used to call a commitment phobe. And he's upfront about it. Lily, though, is no pushover. She's got her guard up against a dude with a bit of a 50 Shades of Grey vibe. She bids him and his seductive come-ons a fast if flirtatious goodbye. She has bought a beat-up old storefront in the Back Bay, which she renovates and transforms into a flower shop with a lavishly ornate shabby chic aesthetic. She hires Elisa, played by the always welcome Jenny Slate, and the two become best buddies. That's when the first twist happens. Ryle wanders into the store because it turns out that he's Elisa's brother. So he and Lily reconnect, and she agrees, with a great deal of caution, to give him a chance. The way the movie is set up, he's got to prove himself to her and to the audience. At the same time, the film flashes back to Lily in high school, where she's played by Isabella Ferrer, who matches up with Lively eerily well. There we see her fall into a relationship with Atlas, Alex Neustadter, a sensitive classmate she meets when he's homeless, squatting in an abandoned building across the street from her family's house. As we learn, he has a good reason to be on the street, symbolized by how he got his scarred hand. And though she helps rescue him, their connection is about something more basic. They click, despite the ridicule she gets from her classmates about it. We wonder, what's the link between this romance and the one brewing between Lily and Ryle? Is she drawn to bad boys? Outsiders? Love stories have more or less faded out of mainstream cinema, and it's gratifying to see one that isn't a rom-com for once. As Ryle puts his player ways behind him, we want to see Lily happy, and we think, maybe this is it. Then, one evening, at a hip eatery, the restaurant's owner drops by the table and Lily notices a familiar scarred hand. It is Atlas, now back from 8 years in the military and other experiences. He looks different. That's because he's played by a different actor, Brandon Sklenar, who suggests a baby-faced Russell Crowe, but also because he has aged into adulthood like fine wine. Aha, we think. So here's the movie. Lily falls in love with the charismatic but questionable Ryle. Sweet, chivalrous Atlas returns from her past. Who will she go with? The answer at first seems obvious, the blast from the past, a la Casablanca. But Ryle appears to be a born-again romantic. Maybe the movie is going to undercut our expectations. It does, though, not in the way we're expecting. It Ends With Us is a story of how people repeat bad patterns in their lives, even, or maybe especially, when they don't realize it. And the way this is conveyed is at once the essence of soap opera and also quite emotionally shrewd. For Lily really loves Ryle, and just like her, we experience their relationship from the inside. When we see a glint of angry fire in Ryle, we want it to go away. Justin Baldoni's performance is rivetingly layered. He makes Ryle a compartmentalized man, one who's truly trying yet is unable to see himself. There are more twists, including one that left an audience member at the screening I attended going, "No!" which kind of spoke for everyone there. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she did. That's what good soap opera does. It heightens the twists that life will throw at you. And in the case of It Ends With Us, it gives Blake Lively the chance to play a woman who tries to make the right choice, but has to wake up from the dream she's been living in, maybe her whole life, to do it. By the end, we're watching a different movie than the one we thought we were. But it's still a love story, just one about learning to love yourself. What would you say if your daughter told you her boyfriend pushed her down the stairs, but it's okay because really it was just an accident? Questions like this are at the heart of It Ends With Us, based on the best-selling novel of the same name by Colleen Hoover. This is a message picture about what it takes to break the vicious cycle of domestic violence. It is not subtle. After the emotional turmoil of her estranged father's funeral in Maine, our heroine, the impeccably fashionable Lily Bloom, Blake Lively, the best clothes horse movie star since Kay Francis, breaks into a rooftop to peer at the vast beauty of Boston's skyline. Before she can do much introspection, she meets the impossibly handsome and impossibly named Ryle Kincaid. Justin Baldoni, also the film's director, a neurosurgeon, naturally. Baldoni comes barreling into the scene like a hurricane, hurling a pair of steel chairs across the rooftop in anger. Instead of repulsion from this violent act, Lily finds herself intrigued and drawn to his charm and megawatt smile. Their playful patter, peppered with barbs veiled as flirtation from Ryle, ramps up until the dashing surgeon is summoned back to the hospital by his beeper. This is, of course, not the last we see of Ryle. He just happens to be the brother of Elisa, Jenny Slate, the quirky, rich and bored housewife Lily hires to help her run the cottagecore florist shop of her dreams. Although Lily repeatedly insists that she just wants to be friends, Ryle pursues her, ignoring her many pleas just as flagrantly as she ignores all his red flags. Lust is a hell of a drug. Quickly, Ryle's negs and flirtatious barbs ramp up, transforming into toxic jealousy and other forms of obsessive behavior. This includes inviting himself to dinner with her mother by dropping the L word for the first time. One of several such instances of emotional manipulation he brandishes like a silver-tipped dagger. Before she knows it, Lily is not only in a relationship she didn't really want, she herself becomes an outlet for Ryle's raging temper. The early scenes of Lily and Ryle's volatile courtship are interwoven with scenes in which teenage Lily, Isabella Ferrer, falls in love for the first time with a schoolmate named Atlas, Alex Neustatter. The soulful boy is squatting in the abandoned house across the street from hers, fleeing his mother's abusive boyfriend. The generous and non-judgmental Lily offers both aid and friendship when Atlas needs it the most. He in turn offers her a caring shoulder and a safe place to finally express the fear she feels as she watches her father physically abuse her own mother over and over again. These scenes are innocent and tender, the two young actors imbuing the teenagers with just the right balance of world weariness from the violence they've already endured, and the irrepressible hope that comes with youth. Yet Baldoni and his team of editors, Una Flaherty and Rob Sullivan, can't quite find the right balance between these scenes and the more erotic and violent scenes featuring Baldoni and Lively. However, once Brandon Sklenar, doing his best Harry Connick Jr. in Hope Floats, enters as the grown-up Atlas, he is able to craft an effortless, natural chemistry with Lively that is nearly as strong as these early moments, although they both are far too fleeting. This story of love, trauma, and abuse is wrapped up in the same amber-hued autumnal glow of Lively's bestie Taylor Swift's short film for her autobiographical song All Too Well, 10-minute version, which itself is about an abusive relationship. Lily even has the same tousled strawberry blonde tresses as the short film's star Sadie Sink. So, naturally, the film's most climatic moment of domestic abuse, like the short, takes place in the couple's kitchen. Later, the moment where Lily comes into her own power as she attempts to rebuild her life is underscored by Swift's My Tears Ricochet, which perhaps counts as a spoiler if you know the topic of the song. Swifties, I'm sorry. It Ends With Us is a fine-looking picture. Baldoni and cinematographer Barry Peterson know how to frame movie star faces in flattering medium close-ups, allowing every nuanced emotion, every twinkle in their eyes to transport the viewers on this emotional journey with them, even when the characters feel more like didactic ciphers than fully realized human beings. Lily's flower shop, which never seems to have any customers, is a Pinterest board brought to life. And Lively's designer duds are nearly as show-stopping as the ones she sports in A Simple Favor. Lively does her best to add emotional layers to Lily so we see her internal growth, but this process is often hampered by the film around her. I kept thinking of Alice, Darling, Mary Nighy's incredible film about intimate partner violence from a few years back, in which Anna Kendrick finds herself suffocating in a psychologically abusive relationship. In that film, Kendrick's character is given a full life and a group of friends who help her overcome the codependent trap she's been caged in. Here, the few women in Lily's life, her so-called best friend Elisa and her mother Jenny, Amy Morton, are underdeveloped, relegated to a handful of scenes that largely exist as plot points. The PG-13 rating keeps the violence Ryle inflicts on Lily, or her father's violence in the flashbacks, to a minimum visually, and often seen in slow motion or in choppy montages. Christy Hall's script unfortunately often falls into as the father of daughters territory, giving more care to explaining why these men are the way they are, especially in Ryle's case in the film's most cringe-worthy twist, than it does to the psychology, let alone the economics, of why women often stay with abusive partners. Instead, this subject, which should really be the key to the whole story, is covered in one very short scene between Lily and her mother. The forced love triangle once Atlas re-enters Lily's adult life also restricts things, causing Lily's life to once again orbit mostly around the men in it. It Ends With Us is certainly not a bad film. At times it's actually quite good, and its central message is crafted with intention and care. I just wish it had a sharper focus on Lily's interiority, her life beyond her trauma, and who she really is in relation to herself, and herself alone. Book Talk has become an outlet for avid readers to share recommendations and discuss novels that draw them in with their sharp storytelling. Although authors like Emily Henry and Sarah J. Maas have seen their penned efforts skyrocket in sales due to their popularity on TikTok, Colleen Hoover remains one of the writers with the most visibility on the platform and in bookstores. Her novel, It Ends With Us, took over the top spot on 2022's bestseller list. With millions of copies sold, it is daunting to picture a book that has resonated with many getting transported to the big screen in a way that maintains the same nuance and sensitivity as its source material. Yet, in Justin Baldoni's careful hands, this on-screen adaptation similarly strikes the core. Although It Ends With Us, readers were skeptical to see that an older cast was lined up for the novel's screen treatment, myself included. The final product makes it clear that aging up the characters was for the best. Lively's Lily starts off high-spirited and sassy, trying hard not to give in to Ryle's blunt pickup lines. She knows what she wants in a partner, and being the next item on his extensive list of flings, isn't it? Lily is only convinced to be with Ryle after he is ready to embark on a committed relationship. Her transition from being a confident woman in love to a fearful and distraught victim is evident through Lively's performance. The Gossip Girl alum taps into her most challenging role to date with reverence, taking it upon herself to be a voice for the women watching her character's story take a violent turn. Despite the Lily on screen being in her 30s, as opposed to the book, her experience feels more universal and gut-wrenching, considering her level of maturity and strong-willed personality. When a topic like domestic violence is incorporated into a story, it can come out as faulty and sometimes exploitative. That isn't the case here, and it's due to Baldoni's direction and portrayal of Ryle. Like Lily, the audience finds the character amusing and roots for the couple's electric connection. But once things go south between them, the director draws the line. In a sense, Baldoni's take on the source material is even better when dealing with this theme than Hoover's novel, because it doesn't spend time redeeming Ryle from his actions. The character's behavior in the film isn't romanticized to the point that the viewers who were captivated by him at the start no longer feel the spark when he later walks into the room. Although the skeleton in Ryle's closet humanizes him, it never takes away the weight of the abuse that he inflicts. Similarly to Lively, Baldoni has never charted this territory as a performer before, and he does so meticulously. Although he brings depth to the character, it is never enough to convince the audience to want Lily to stick around like her mother did. Another element that positively aids the film's translation from book to screen is its soundtrack. As the protagonist falls for Ryle and sees her life slowly come to mirror that of her parents, a relationship she has grown to dread, the needle drops add even more emotion and meaning to her hardships. From Lana Del Rey to Birdie, the music perfectly accompanies her journey through the ups and downs of falling in love and then falling apart when violence gets in the way. Yet, the most poignant song choice here is Taylor Swift's My Tears Ricochet, which holds significance in its placement in the film. Not only does it encapsulate the burden that comes with Lily's internal struggle towards Ryle and what it means to be with him despite the tender start to their bond, but it also represents her return to being the joyful woman she once was. Although the movie serves as a purposeful cautionary tale, it also incorporates a love triangle of sorts which is left on the sidelines. Lily's first boyfriend, Atlas, Brandon Sklenar, comes back into her life years after their teen romance unfolded, and soon becomes the support system that she needs. As a result, the character's arc is incredibly limited, considering the former couple's backstory. His relationship with Lily during high school, which is presented through flashbacks, with Isabella Ferrer and Alex Neustadter playing their younger versions, is the only background we get on Atlas, leading his adult presence in the film to be one note. Aside from his helping hand when she needs it the most, the character barely gets the development that Lily and even Ryle have. The flashbacks are also not as strongly interwoven with the present when it comes to Lily and Atlas's young love. The start of their romance is laid out well, but by the end of the flashback sequences, little is known as to Atlas's whereabouts after they part ways and how their happiness being cut short affected Lily. Although an adaptation can only cover so many scenes and parts of the novel that it is based on, reducing the past and the present when it comes to one of the film's most pivotal characters is a fault that is hard to shake away. It also feels a bit of a disservice to Ferrer and Neustadter, who could have done much more than what they were given. Despite the decision to minimize Atlas's presence to a plot device for Lily's road to breaking free from a generational cycle, Baldoni's It Ends With Us is an emotional and effective depiction of domestic violence and how to find the strength to overcome it. The film is sensitive to the main topic, and its performances and direction allow for Lily's experience to empower survivors. The project is also careful not to romanticize the aggressor, which is a positive distinction from the source material. Although slight changes were made to the story present in the novel, most of them, including the change in age, serve the adaptation well. As a whole, Baldoni's directorial effort isn't made for the fans who were drawn in by the love triangle, but rather intended for the audiences who resonate with Lily's journey. And maybe that is for the better, although they both are far too fleeting. This story of love, trauma, and abuse is wrapped up in the same amber-hued autumnal glow of Lively's bestia Taylor Swift's short film for her autobiographical song All Too Well 10-minute version, which itself is about an abusive relationship. Lily even has the same tousled strawberry blonde dresses as the short film star Sync. So naturally, the film's most climactic moment of domestic abuse, like the short, takes place in the couple's kitchen. Later, the moment where Lily comes into her own power as she attempts to rebuild her life is underscored by Swift's My Tears Ricochet, which perhaps counts as a spoiler if you know the topic of the song. Swifties, I'm sorry, it ends with, Us is a fine-looking picture. Baldwin and cinematographer Barry Peterson know how to frame movie star faces in flattering medium close-ups, allowing every nuanced emotion, every twinkle in their eyes to transport the viewers on this emotional journey with them. Even when the characters feel more like didactic ciphers than fully realized human beings, Lily's flower shop, which never seems to have any customers, is a Pinterest board brought to life. And Lively's designer duds are nearly as show-stopping as the ones she sports in A Simple Favor. Lively does her best to add emotional layers to Lily so we see her internal growth, but this process is often hampered by the film around her. I kept thinking of Alice, Darling, Mary Na's incredible film about intimate partner violence from a few years back in which Anacondria finds herself suffocating in a psychologically abusive relationship. In that film, Kendrick's character is given a full life in a group of friends who help her overcome the codependent trap she's been caged in. Here, the few women in Lily's life, and her so-called best friend Elisa and her mother, Jenny Amy Morton A., are underdeveloped, relegated to a handful of scenes that largely exist as plot points. AIA the PG. Violence RA inflicts on Lily or her father's violence in the flashbacks to a minimum visually and often seen in slow motion or in choppy montages. A Christie, Hall's script unfortunately often falls into as the father of daughters territory, giving more care to why these men are the way they are, especially in Reel's case in this film's most cringe-worthy twist than it does to the psychology, let alone the economic say of why women often stay with abusive partners. Instead, this subject, which should really be the key to the whole story, is covered in one very short scene between Lily and her mother. The forced love triangle, once Atlas retours Lily's adult life, also restricts things, causing Lily's life to, once again, orbit mostly around the men in it. It Ends With Us is certainly not a bad film. At times, it's actually quite good, and its central message is I realized those details were futile. There were a lot of different elements that went into crafting the original novel that I knew could not be incorporated into the film. So I had to keep that in mind. But I was disappointed in how much of the original story was cut. The book was not just a story about domestic violence, it was Lily's story. By the end of the movie, I felt as though I had not watched Lily Bloom's story. It was almost like she was a completely different character from the novel. Yes, there were a lot of things that lined up, but some of the most crucial parts of the novel were either only mentioned briefly or completely taken out of the film. One thing that really stood out to me was the cameo made by the author of the book, Colleen Hoover. At first, it just caught my attention and made me keep making an appearance as a background character, drawing attention away from the main characters. Luckily, the scene itself was not important, but it was irritating to have the focus shift from Royal and Lily to Hoover. With how long it took to have this movie produced, I expected something more from it. It just seemed to be lacking in every department. The wardrobe, especially Lily's, was put together sloppily, and the acting was very stiff for a good portion of the film. Lively and Baldoni were just not compatible, and it was noticeable. Baldoni and Jenny Slate, who plays Elisa, were the only two actors who impressed me. The script was also very awkward. There were some lines that made me cringe. The movie in its entirety felt rushed and lot like Hoover's most recent novels. With the severity of the topic, I wish it had been executed better. I also think Atlas should have been more present in the film. He was just a side character. While one of the main romance tropes of the story is a love triangle, without him, it is just a line. But they did cut a lot of the scenes from young Lily's perspective, which is where we see Atlas most in the book. The second half of the film definitely reminded me of why I stepped foot in that theater to begin with. While I was unimpressed with Lively's performance, while Donnie did a fantastic job portraying Real, an actor does a good job when you start to hate them because of a character they played. I think the movie turned out better than I had originally anticipated. But considering the bar was so low, I was still disappointed. It barely passed the bar up, which was on the floor. I think Baldwin and Slate really saved the film with their performances. Quality of the movie aside, it did a great job of raising awareness of domestic violence. I would not recommend this movie to someone who has read the book and is as attached to it as I am, or to anyone who is looking to watch it as an alternative to the book. The film is unsubstantial in comparison to the novel. I also probably would not watch this movie again. If you see me watching it, it is more than likely only to see Baldoni. Watching it intense with USA was an emotional journey that hit me harder than I expected. I went knowing Colleen Hoover's book had to warn many readers apart, but seeing it brought to life on screen was a different experience. This movie wasn't just a love story. It was a raw, painful look at how love can go from beautiful to terrifying in the blink of an eye. What resonated most with me was how the story forces you to sit with the uncomfortable realities of abuse, something that's rarely addressed with such depth in romance films. Not all love stories must have a happy ending. I like that this one was practical and showed the flaws in relationships. This is the back. Lily, a young woman with a complicated childhood, tries to navigate life in Boston where she meets the charming neurosurgeon Raoul in Cade Justin Baldoni. What starts as a passionate romance turns into a turbulent relationship, forcing Lily to confront the darker sides of love, memories of her abusive childhood, and her lingering connection with Atlas Corgan, Brandon's clanner, her first love. Lily's journey is about heartbreak, survival, and the difficult choices that come with leaving a toxic relationship. The narrative shifts between present-day struggles and flashbacks to Lily's teenage years, giving a deeper understanding of the cycle of abuse and the strength it takes to break free. Lily Blossom Bloom, Blake Lively, is a florist. Yes, really, who has left her sleepy hometown to make it big in Boston? Having left behind her dark past, including an abusive father, she's not interested in love. A chance meeting with Riel and Cade Justin Baldy, who also directs, changes everything. He's handsome, charming, successful, and extremely into her. He can't stop thinking about her. He wants her, and soon she cannot deny her own feelings. But there's this dark streak in him that's become increasingly difficult to ignore. A Broken Bar, based on the wildly popular novel by Colleen Hoover that became one of the defining books of TikTok. The Tent with USA had a tough job ahead of it. While the source material is a multi-million bestseller that has legions of devoted, one critic, myself included, has called out its questionable portrayal of domestic abuse. Hoover's work is beloved and derided for its blending of high emotional stakes, soap opera plotting, and spicy sex scenes. Putting all of that into a story about a woman trying to escape the cycle of violence quickly revealed Hoover's limitations as a writer. Although millions of readers evidently disagree with me, it's possible to adapt a bad book into a good film, but it requires a ruthless editorial hand and a willingness to change that which does not work. It ends with USA tries to rectify the tonal conflicts of its source material. You can see the glimmer of something, if not brilliant, then at least workable. Largely, though, this is a film that cannot escape the confines of its origins. If you looked at the marketing for this film and thought it was a rom-com, I wouldn't blame you. The obfuscation of its plot, that of a woman falling into a relationship where her life is at stake, is indicative both of the book's issues and the film's inability to overcome them. It wants to be hot and spicy, but also have comedic elements including the funny in-laws, played by Hassan Hajim Jenny Slate, in full Pixar character reaction gift mode. It wants to examine something heart-wrenching, but also have a subplot about the long-lost adolescent love. It's not impossible to juggle these myriad ideas. Done well, it would reflect the dizzying nature of an abusive relationship, where things can flip from fine to not with the drop of a hat. But here, as with the book, it's mosaic of ill-fitting tonal dissonances that make the comedic bits unfunny and the dramatic bits frivolous. You can see where they've tried to fix some of these errors. They were smart enough to leave the A letters to Ellen DeGeneres' structure. But what they've replaced them with isn't much better. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, amidst their Cold War with Baldoni, have been eager to let the world know that Reynolds did some rewrites on the balcony scene where Lily and Ryle first meet. Don't worry, Deadpool. We can tell the awkward fit of dollars to war Marvel banter into this gumbo has her fingerprints all over it. Lively does herself no favors here either. She's a perfectly serviceable actress who can often be very good with the right material, such as the rich lady soapy goodness, or a simple favor. Here there are moments where she shines, especially whenever Lily tries to hide her evident fear with a rectus smile. Mostly, however, she flounders, but the material is largely what's dragging her down, stripped down to her core. Lily's entire characterization is one of a barely sketched out woman with a lot of pain. Things happen to her, but there's no sense of an internal life beyond that. This is the book's fault too. Hoover's heroines are almost always like this, and they're usually as stupidly named too. More screens for readers to project themselves onto than figures of their own existence. Baldoni does better largely because the book and screenplay seemed far more concerned with the abuser's emotional arc than his victims. Another crude trademark, he has the uncanny charm of a troubled man who thinks violence is the answer to everything, even if the conclusion to the entire story is conveniently neat, and doesn't do that arc justice. It's also a problem that he's much more interesting to watch than the other guy. Brandon's Clanner, who plays Atlas, Lily's first love. One wonders if anyone involved with It Ends With Us, including the author, was truly focused on depicting the domestic abuse with empathy and proportion. Baldoni makes for some good moments where the camera lingers on Lively's face after she's been struck, and the whole world suddenly changes for us. Such scenes, however, are few and far between. And a lot of this film's aesthetic leans harder and perfume-ad than indie drama, albeit one. With more rich people porn, the film seems more preoccupied with sexy scenes, or building a love triangle. Lily's mother, played by Amy Morton, is largely ignored, meaning the entire theme of abuse being a cycle that engulfs many families is weakened as a result. What was it sacrificed in favor of? This is a 130-minute film, and you couldn't cut out some of the bad banner to make room for such a crucial detail. It Ends With USA ends up being frivolous because its source material it's part of an industrial complex where a story of abuse is written and marketed as a spicy, and where the author can do coloring book and a nail polish a tie-in merch. The roots of an honest story are here, but misguided decisions smother them at every turn. A book this popular was never going to be allowed the benefits of a freewheeling adaptation, regardless of how much it would have improved the narrative. But this isn't about honesty. It's about a phony product that can sell more copies. And hey, it's worked. So what do I know? A broken bar while watching the film for the second time last week. It was hard to separate my thoughts from Ken Hoover's 2016 best-selling novel It Ends With USA tells the story of Lily Blossom Bloom Lively, an aspiring florist and entrepreneur who, after an uncomfortable experience at her father's prayer meet, crosses paths with the charming and handsome neurosurgeon Raoul and Cade Baldy on the rooftop of his apartment building. Lily, still reeling from a whirlwind of emotions, feels an immediate attraction arrival. The chemistry between them is undeniable, and after some light flirting, they part ways, each knowing their paths will cross again, just like in the movies. True to form, they meet again a few months later at Lily's flower shop, a dream she's worked hard to build. After a series of ups and downs, they begin a relationship. However, Lily can't shake the memory of her first love, Atlas, Corgan, Brandon's Clanner, whom she had mentioned to Ryle during their first rooftop encounter. The film shifts significantly between Lily's teenage years, portrayed by the brilliantly cast as Afar, and her adult life. We see her strained and troubled relationship with her abusive father, her confusion over why her mother endures such violence, and the solace she found in her first love, Atlas. By chance, Lily reunites with Atlas at his restaurant, Root, where she realizes she still feels the same peace and comfort around him as she did when they were young. As the story progresses, the darker side of Lily and Ryle's seemingly perfect romance unfolds. Lily comes to terms with the truth. Her relationship with Ryle is far from the fairy tale it initially seemed. After narrowly escaping a horrific attempt at rape by Ryle, who accuses her of cheating with Atlas, Lily summons the courage to break free. She revisits the abuse and manipulation she endured. Realizing how Ree had gaslighted her into believing that his violent behavior was just an accident, as she confronts her demons, Lily must decide what kind of future she wants for herself. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni deliver standout performances. Lively infuses her character with her signature humor in the lighter moments, while Baldoni portrays Royal as a man who is both charming and unsettling, carrying his own hidden trauma. Brandon's Clanner also shines as Atlas, portraying him as kind and supportive via the complete opposite of Riley. The film has several interesting details, especially for those who watch it a second time. Lily's true love is named at low set and APPPT choice, given that Atlas is a collection of maps and Atlas in anatomy refers to the topmost vertebrae symbolizing strength and support. In many ways, it is Atlas who helps Lily find her way after she escapes her abusive relationship, guiding her back to stability and security. Atlas also runs a restaurant named Ruth, symbolizing the origin of growth and renewal, mirroring the role Lily has played in his life. The film also touches on generational trauma, highlighting Lily's relationship with her mother, Jenny, who stayed in an abusive marriage for years through Lily's journey. The film suggests a cycle of abuse where Lily breaks free to protect her own daughter, while also showing empathy toward her mother, who perhaps was unable to leave due to the emotional and societal pressures she faced. Ultimately, Attendance with USA has noble intentions, attempting to address intimate partner violence, abuse, sexual assault, gaslighting, and generational trauma. However, the film fails to delve deeply enough into these issues, offering only a surface-level portrayal of the true horrors that survivors endure. Instead of being a raw exploration of abuse, the movie disguises itself as a romantic drama, undermining the very survivors it aims to advocate for. It feels as if the filmmakers were hesitant to explore the dark realities too deeply, perhaps out of concern for alienating the younger audience that might be drawn in by the appealing pairing of Lively and Baldoni. Interestingly, on December 20th, Blake Lively filed a lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, accusing him of sexual harassment and claiming he orchestrated a public smear campaign against HA's situation that tackles the power dynamics in the film. As the legal drama continues to unfold, it's impossible not to see the parallel between Lively's real-life situation and her portrayal of Lilia, a woman breaking free from a toxic, controlling relationship and taking charge of her own narrative. In this sense, both the Lively and Lily are two peas in the same pod, or two petals on the same flower, setting an example for their respective daughters and showing them that, like the flower in the story, it's possible to bloom after surviving trauma. In a way, Lively's very serious lawsuit against co-star Baldwin reflects what I had hoped the film would be. To all of my fellow Vanderbilt students and bookworms, we all knew that it was only a matter of time before one of Colleen Hoover's novels was optioned for the big screen. The rights to Attends with USA were purchased by actor and director Justin Baldwin and his production company Wayfarer Studios. Actress Blake Lively joined the project as a producer and also stars as the leading woman Lily Blossom Bloom. Yes, that's her real name. Eventually, it was also decided that Baldoni would erect in tandem with playing Royal and Cade Lily's abusive partner. Author Colleen Hoover has permeated the literary scene since 2021, rising to fame via book talk with hits, such as It Ends With Us, Verity, and many more. Even as I sit in a coffee shop writing this piece, a woman a few feet away from me holds a Hoover novel in her hands. Titles litter the bookshelves of my friends and sister, and I admit that while I'm not a co-host and I've dabbled in a few of her titles, mainly for field research purposes known for her illustrious romance plots and digestible storylines, Hoover has established herself as the Taylor Swift of the literary world, and her fans even act like the most rabid of Swifties, vehemently defending her at every turn. I find Ken Hoover to be the fast fashion brand of the publishing industry, a cheaply made and ultimately forgotten after one or two wears. I must admit that I never intended to see It Ends With Us. My friends, including one who is a hardcore Ken Hoover fan, convinced me to, and I justified it, saying that it could be good for journalistic purposes. I did read the book, but I felt like that was enough for me. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. Yeah, some parts of the story felt rather predictable, but the overarching themes were extremely touching and shed light on domestic violence victims that we don't normally get. My review, the fact that Hoover draws on personal stories from her own upbringing in this book, is also commendable. My overarching opinion of the film also aligns with this statement. However, the movie was somehow far worse. For those who are unaware, it ends with as follows: Lily Bloom lively as she moves to Boston to open her dream flower shop, fittingly named Lily Bloom's. Along the way, she meets the charming and broody neurosurgeon Ryle in Cade Baldoni. Lily and Ryle have what appears to be a perfect relationship, but once they are married, Ryle's darker side comes out. After discovering that she's pregnant, Lily must decide whether to leave or stay. Let's also throw in the fact that her first love, Atlas Corrigan, Brandon's clanner, also lives in Boston and is still in love with her, and Lily is probably in love with him to do it there. Are many layers to this film. Most pointedly, the generational cycle of abuse in Lily's family. Her father abused her mother, and while she vowed to never be like her mom, Lily ends up in the same situation. Additionally, the film doesn't exactly paint Real as a villain. The whole first hour of the film is intended to read as a rom-com, and not a good one at that. As the story unfolds, the audience learns more about Ree's background and childhood, an attempt to perhaps explain why he is the way he is, and render him a more sympathetic character. But his abusive behavior is inexcusable. In short, it ends with us attempts to have viewers fall in love with Ryle just as Lily does, so that we are just as shocked and dazed as she is when the abuse begins. However, the film fails in this endeavor. So, the intended impact becomes moot and difficult to grasp. I know that the screenwriter for It's With Us was Christy Hall, but the movie feels like it was written by an eye interface that was allowed to comb through only the cheesiest and darkest millennial depths of Wattpad for referential content. What is supposed to be a meet-cute between Lily and Ryle on the roof is an excruciatingly painful watch. Everyone in the theater where I saw the movie was laughing at multiple points throughout the film that were not supposed to be funny. My personal favorite was the scene with Lively and the Fichettes. If you know, you know. The dialogue didn't seem heartfelt at all, read as one large roasted into the SNL skit of a rom-com. In addition, I would love to have a word with the music supervisor of this film. There is something to be said about using well-known music in a film. It's acceptable sometimes. But when there are crucial and emotionally heavy scenes, using incredibly popular music simply takes you out of the story. When young Lily is Blair and young Atlas, Alex New Stretcher, have a romantic moment, Skinny Love by Birdie plays over it, I just couldn't take that seriously. And also only increased the Wattpadness. What really did it for me, though, was the use of Ladell Raised Cherry, which Lively admitted she had to fight for, and Taylor Swift's My Tears Ricochet. Sorry if it sounds dramatic, but I slammed my hand on my tray table and face-bombed. Unless it's Welcome to New York in a cheesy montage, I don't think you can tastefully place a Taylor Swift song in a movie. It untethers the viewer from the reality in which they are supposed to be immersed, especially when that reality is a montage of Lily Bloom, having flashbacks to the instances of domestic violence that she faced. While the overall plot of the Attempts with USA novel didn't give the film's creative team a great skeletal structure to work with, there was absolutely a missed opportunity to take the topic of domestic violence and dive into the legitimate emotional complexities of it. The film does not provide any indication that Lily struggled to choose to leave. Real and she was incredibly lucky that people were in her corner, including Real's sister, who doubles as Lily's best friend. She's also lucky that Real never tried to harm her once she left her apartment and moved back home. This isn't the case for everyone, and It Ends With Us paints the most optimal version of these situations. Perhaps I'm being too much of a cynic in my critiques, but the compounding elements surrounding Lily and Ree's relationship cheapened the story and brought it into Lifetime movie soap opera territory instead of something that had the potential to be grand. This is similar to how Baldoni is using the press tour to comment about domestic violence awareness, whilst Lively is seemingly promoting her new hair care line that doesn't include conditioner and talking about the new Deadpool Wolverine movie. If the whole team were more dedicated to bringing truth to It Ends With Us instead of branding it as Lily is such a girl boss, then I'm sure it would have been worth more of my time. With the potential sequel, it starts with us in the works. I truly hope that it is made in a more honest way. Otherwise, it's better left unmade. Any profundity in it ends with us. The first film adaptation of one of Colleen Hoover's massively best-selling novels, in which everyone harbors relentless and has uniformly excellent sex, pretty much taps out of the three main characters' names. The movie follows Lily Bloom, a woman passionate about flowers whose self-confidence and capacity for love will one day blossom again. That's her middle name, by the way, Blossom. Her first relationship was with a boy named Atlas, who figuratively mapped her heart and was probably her soulmate. And she ends up married to a man named Ryle, who is rich and charming, and whose anger issues explode when he gets, riled up. There would be some whimsy to these names. I tense with USA didn't overshadow its didactic eccentricity. With so much other melodramatic stuff. The film cycles its characters through romantic drama tropes and a relentless barrage of abuse, sticking close enough to Hoover's plot that fans of the book will be satisfied. Blake Lively is serviceable in the lead role. She gives Lilia a sturdy, guarded core that makes the character relatable, though she's never as convincingly deluded by her husband's lies about their physical altercations as the script requires. One moment that particularly stood out to me was a scene between Lily and her mother, where Lily realizes how similar their stories are. It felt so real and heartbreaking because it's this moment of clarity for Lily where she sees her own life playing out like a tragic echo of her mother's past. I found myself thinking about the cyclical nature of abuse and how it traps people across generations. That scene stuck with me long after the movie ended because it reminded me that even the strongest people can find themselves caught in that cycle. It explores how love can be both beautiful and destructive, and examines the cycle of abuse from multiple perspectives. I know how difficult it can be to leave someone you love. Even when that love becomes harmful, it confronts the hard choices that people, especially women, often face in abusive relationships, offering no easy answers, but rather a path toward healing. I particularly like the movies Justin Baldoni directs. The plots are always promising. I love it. If 5 feet apart, his stories make me just pause and think about life issues, which helps me remember some people are going through a lot. Justin Baldoni as Royal was surprisingly intense. He wasn't just a one-dimensional villain, and that's what made it all the more unsettling. There were moments where I felt myself wanting to root for him, only to have that feeling ripped away as his darker side emerged. That constant push and pull left me to warn, because just like Lily, I could understand why she stayed even when it was clear things were spiraling out of control. While Donnie played that complexity so well, and it's a reminder that toxic relationships aren't always black and white, Atlas, played by Brandon Scanner, was a quiet but necessary force in the story. His character didn't need to be over the top to have an impact. He was the steady, calm presence. And every time he showed up, it was like a breath of fresh air. It made me realize that sometimes the real strength in love isn't the fireworks and passion, but the consistency and safety it offers. One of the most personal takeaways for me was how it ends with USA forces you to rethink love. We're often conditioned to see love as this grand, sweeping emotion that conquers all. But the movie digs into the uncomfortable truth that sometimes love isn't enough. Lily's journey was powerful because it wasn't about her choosing between two men. It was about her choosing herself. There were some slow moments, especially as the film shifted into heavier emotional territory. At times, I felt almost frustrated watching Lily struggle with decisions that seem clear from the outside. But I think that frustration is the point. It mirrors the helplessness people feel when they're trapped in abusive relationships. The movie isn't trying to make you comfortable. It's forcing you to sit in that discomfort to understand how layered and messy these situations can be. I admire her best friend co-worker Alisac and Cade Jenny Slate, who is also the younger sister to Real. She was a good friend to Lily and didn't try to side with her brother, telling her the hidden truths about him, not sugarcoating it. When she found out what he was doing to her, she told her to leave immediately, walking away from Up It Ends With Us. I felt heavy, but also inspired. It's a movie that makes you want to call the woman in your life and remind them of their worth, to be a little more gentle and understanding with people going through things you might not fully grasp. In the end, A Tense with USA isn't just about Lily's journey. It's about breaking free, choosing self-love, and finding the courage to write your ending. For me, that's what made this film so powerful. It's not about the romance, it's about the resilience, and that's a message I'll carry with me. I want people to devour my books in one sitting because the storyline and dialogue are too gripping to put down. I don't try to write heavy books that educate, inform, and impress. My only goal is to entertain, and hopefully that's what I'm doing. A Ken Hoover AA. What follows is a review of the film adaptation of Colleen Hoover's novel It Hands With Us, which addresses domestic violence. It is not a review of the book the film is based on, which I have not read. Hoover has fully endorsed all aspects of the film, describing herself as extremely happy with its completion. And a tilde, inverted exclamation mark. Law Hitchcock is seen in a fleeting scene, action. To Hoover, a remarkable social media genius with a strong presence on book. I will discuss the film in detail. It's positive, as all discussion of domestic violence leading to societal and personal awareness is meaningful. Plus the acting and set costume design of the film, even when in contradiction to the character portrayed, provides a gifted ensemble and a plus entertainment diversion, until as the drama unfolds, discomfort sets in. The film's danger. It presents an oversimplification of the complex topic of domestic or intimate partner violence, where the circumstances of the woman abused and her path to peaceful resolve offered in the film are pure fantasy. Colleen Hoover has seen domestic violence up close. Her earliest memory is being awakened at age 2 by screaming as she witnessed her dad throwing a television set at her mom, who subsequently divorced him. Hoover's followers are aware of her respect for, devotion to, and cherishment of her mom, echoed by their matching heart-shaped tattoos inside their wrists. Colleen Hoover got her start through self-publishing while living in a long-gone trailer with her husband, her high school sweetheart, a long-distance trucker on the road much of every month, and their 3 young sons bought by a loan, long ago repaid from her stepfather. Hoover refused to acquiesce to the well-established limited brand that has defined her young adult market. In its place, she established the inclusive vehicle Hoover brand of for romance, psychological thrillers, a ghost story, and characters who endure homelessness and helplessness. Each book brimming with enormously satisfying sex, intense drama, surprise twists and turns, and a promised happy ending. An adored cult figure to millions of readers worldwide who call themselves cohorts. Hoover's has been a singular achievement. She holds book contracts with several publishing houses and often retains ebook rights. She authored 8 of the 25 best-selling 2001-22 U.S. print titles. The following year, It Ends With USA, and its sequel, It Starts With Us. Became blockbuster titles, selling more books than the Bible. For the reigning queen of bestseller lists, the period of August 4th through August 10th marked week 133 that up. It Ends With USA helped the New York Times as a coveted #1 slot for print and ebook fiction. To top all of this failure off, not one of these characters ever talks about healing, recovery, therapy, or how to work through past trauma and its effects. Of them all, only R ever asks for help. This is how the film lets down the characters and the audience. The movie could have been 10 times more powerful if they have pulled some of those healing themes into the narrative, mentioning or confronting these ideas in some way. Instead, they chose a path that made each character flawed and fairly unsympathetic, leaving the audience with this awkward and uncomfortable feeling. Because we just watched 3 people make train wrecks of their lives in a way that will likely result in repeating the pattern. This also creates a hollow ending for the film. After several instances of physical abuse, Lily leaves Ryle only to learn that she is pregnant. Then there is a jump in time with a few flyby scenes that speeds us through to the film's first ending, which happens during the birth of their baby. Ryle is there being supportive and loving, even though they've been separated for months. In a moment of joy, with Lily laughing and smiling, she stops and looks into his eyes and tells Royal they need to get a divorce for the sack of their daughter Emmy. After all, what would he tell Emmy to do if she told him that her husband hit her as part of their conversation? Ryle quietly agrees and also says that he could get help. This is literally the first moment in the movie in which someone mentions getting therapy, and Lily tells him number. Blake Lively's smiling and laughter during this scene is an incongruous moment that feels unnatural and hollow. The buildup in the scene paired with her physical actions do not support her dialogue, and it just doesn't feel well constructed from a dramatic perspective. Plus, you can't just cut someone off and expect the pain to end. That's not how it works, and she will still have him in her life because of Emmy. She could have easily said, "Yes, get help for Emmy, but we cannot be together," or something else like that. It's all that was needed to land the scene and move their relationship forward in a supportive way that would actually help their daughter. The divorce scene is possibly the biggest flag that there is a desperate lack of character growth in the film. We then jump ahead 3 to 5 years into the future to the second ending, and we see Lily with her daughter. She runs into Atlas at a street market, and they have an instant connection, a broken bar again. Time has passed, but we never saw any indication that either Lily or Atlas got therapy or have done anything to recover. Remember, in film, we can't just assume they have gotten help. We have to see some indication of it on screen. This means that we have these two people who are pretty much in the same place they were as teenagers reunite again with all of these unresolved emotions, massive feelings of guilt and unaddressed drama, which act as the magnet that continues to connect them, since they are clearly about to fall into a relationship with each other. It feels like the cycle is all starting all over again, Broken Bar, just with a twist this time. In the end, this movie is equal parts brilliant and horrible. It doesn't offer easy solutions or any solutions, and none of the characters know how to help themselves or each other, which leaves the audience feeling confused and ambivalent. We also find ourselves harboring a strange and perhaps unearned sympathy for Riela's character. However, the film portrays a realistic depiction of domestic abuse, survivor guilt, and trauma, but it leaves viewers without closure since nobody actually addresses the root causes of their issues. That is the biggest tragedy in the movie. A nobody grows or heals, and the child is left to inherit all that unresolved pain. The credits to it ends with us. The film adaptation of Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel have just started to roll as my friend and I, to move past the two groups of women in our aisle. One is made up of 4 young friends, and the other is a pair of women who are older than me, but probably not as old as my mom would be if she was still alive. Both groups are still in their plush leather reclining chairs, snuggled under the blankets they brought from home. It's as if each is at home, having just turned the last page of a book, letting the emotions settle over them, not ready to return from a fictional world to the real one. The all-female audience is like me. They left behind bedtimes for children or partners or pets to go out after work for a special early preview of protagonist Lily Bloom's blank, lively, emotional story from the novel. Presumably, they are fans of Hoover's book, and the entire experience feels like the equivalent of staying up too late to turn another page. But instead of being alone in bed with a thrill of reading one more chapter, we're all here together to see how the pages we've already read and posted about online and texted the group chat about are being brought to life through the It Ends With Us film adaptation, which hits theaters Friday. Christy Hall wrote the screenplay, and Justin Baldoni serves as director and stars as Ryan Cade. Overall, the movie closely follows the plot of the viral book talk sensation. On the evening of her father's funeral, Lily Bloom meets neurosurgeon Ryle on the rooftop deck of his apartment complex. Lily is sitting on the edge, gazing out when Ryle explodes through the door. Enraged, he takes out his aggression on one of the patio chairs. When he sees Lily and realizes that he's not alone, he calms down, pulls out a joint, and the two share a conversation and an almost kiss before Lily leaves, planning to never see him again. Months later, Lily unknowingly hires Ryle's sister, Elisa, Jenny Slate, to work with her in her new flower shop. Like the book, the movie flashes back and forth between Lily in high school as Blair and Lily in present day. Young Lily falls in love with Atlas, a high school student experiencing homelessness. Alex knew Strieger while grappling with the trauma of her father's physical abuse of her mother. Older Lily falls in love with Ryle, reconnects with adult Atlas, and eventually, after Ryle becomes physically abusive, struggles to free herself from the cycle of domestic violence that shaped her traumatic face. It Ends With Us captures the visceral essence of Hoover's book. The strength of the adaptation in this regard was intentional. Early on in the process, a group of fans were brought in to read a drought of the script and ensure that the movie did the book justice. And for fans of the book, it probably does. But I also left the theater wondering if the exclusion of a key scene or two undermines the impact of the film. As my friend drives us home, we begin to unpack the movie, moving past our initial reactions. It was so good. Blake Lively was incredible. Brandon Slenner made a good atlas. We also discuss arguably the biggest difference between the book and the movie Other Viewpoint. In the novel, Lily's story is told in the first-person point of view. The reader is inside Lily's head, experiencing the sweet, small moments when she falls in love for the first time with Atlas as a teen, and the lust and momentum of her intoxicating relationship with Bryle. In the movie, the narrative is told in the third-person point of view, but it doesn't feel that way. And this is largely due to the reimagining of the plot and the withholding of information that the book front-loads. In that first rooftop scene in the book, Lily reveals that her dad physically abused her mom. In the movie, she doesn't. Instead, she calls herself an unreliable narrator, and that abuse is shown through flashbacks that impacts her emotional processing of the present. Unlike the book, A, which makes Rila's abuse clear from the beginning, and the movie makes the lines Rila crosses intentionally blurry, this is clear in the first violent incident when Ree hits Lily's face because she laughs when he burns a dish in the oven. A moment based on an incident of real-life abuse between Hoover's dad and mom. When Ryle pulls the casserole out, he forgets to use an oven mitt, jerking his arm back, elbowing Lily in the eye. The cinematography is disorienting and a little fuzzy. The camera too close and the movements too fast for a viewer to get a good read on the situation to know if Ree's contact with Lily's face is intentional or accidental. Lily doesn't know either. Or maybe in her gut she knows it is intentional, but she is falling in love with Royal and doesn't want it to be true. Doesn't want to be in a relationship that resembles the one between her mother and father. Ryle's glass lighting in the aftermath of Lily's black eye. A "we made a mess" makes even the viewer question what is true. In this way, the movie captures Lily's circular thinking and rationalization using cinematography to explore how abuse can make people feel like an unreliable narrator. As my friend and I drive farther away from the theater, we agree that we like those changes. They are effective. The beginning and middle of the movie works. It's the climax that we're questioning. There's a change at that pivotal moment when Lily decides to ask Katniss for help and leave Roy that has been nagging at me since the movie ended. Cycles exist because they are excruciating to break. It takes an astronomical amount of pain and courage to disrupt a familiar pattern. Sometimes it seems easier to just keep running the same familiar circles rather than facing the fear of jumping and possibly not landing on your feet. My mother went through it. Aya went through it. Lily narrates in the book. While the movie allows the viewer to feel as disoriented as Lily does about the abuse, it fails to show how she breaks this cycle once. She accepts it as a cycle that needs to be broken. The viewer sees the act of the violence that becomes her final straw. But we don't get to hear the conversations that take place with Atlas when she asks for help, and eventually Ryla when she begins the process of leaving him. We get the snippet of the support Elisa offers as a best friend, but we only get montages of resiliency to fill in the blanks of Lily rebuilding her life. Hoover says in her authors, note that she has historically written books to entertain, not to educate, persuade, or inform. But she acknowledges that Attends With Us is different. I wanted to write something realistic to the situation my mother was in, a situation a lot of women find themselves in. Hoover writes saying the book was the most grueling thing she's ever written. I wanted to explore the love between Lily and Royal so that I would feel what my mother felt when she had to make the decision to leave my father. As my friend pulls into our neighborhood, I think about those women in the theater. I think about how most if not all of them, read the book. Most of them, like me, had background information from the novel to fill in the blanks, to contextualize the montages, to give meaning to a woman living an abusive marriage and the hard conversations and firm boundaries that decision necessitated. But the movie doesn't do this. It bypasses the hard realities of Lily's bravery, and the women who are going to fill theaters across the country this weekend deserve more. In a world in which intimate partner violency impacts an estimated 12 million people a year, and 1 in 4 women over the age of 18 have been the victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner, it is imperative for cultural depictions like this to provide hope and also proof that it is possible to escape that cycle. A common criticism of the novel is that it glamorizes abuse. While I think that claim hinges on interpretation, I do believe the movie is more at risk for this critique to ring true because of the uneven on rushed pacing at the end, because the film spends less time on how Lily leaves and more time on how she falls in love. The depiction is unbalanced. However, while all of Tessie interpretations are possible, I don't think that the movie makes abuse sexy or exciting. If anything, it shows how complicated cycles of abuse are and how rationalization and gaslighting make women feel like they can neither be the protagonist of their own life nor tell someone their own story. After my friend has dropped me off and I've walked inside and chatted with my husband, he goes to bed, but I'm still awake. I'm thinking about my friend's original question. Is it because it's been a while since I read the book, or was that the most faithful adaptation of a book I've ever seen? My opinions on the book were quite positive. Contrary to others' thoughts on it, I expressed that the book gave some surface-level insight on the difficulties of being in and navigating a domestic abuse relationship. This is especially true for people who previously thought that exiting a relationship like this was as easy as getting up and leaving. To begin, I was disappointed with the casting of Blake Lively playing the role of Lily. Lily Bloom was the protagonist and was portrayed as a Knight El Macron 23-year-old. However, Blake Lively is much older than that and did not quite fit the role. Furthermore, Lily was described to be a redhead. I wish younger actress with red hair, which would have given them the opportunity to make a name for themselves rather than casting a blonde and dyeing her hair red. Aside from that, I thought there were times while I was watching the movie where I felt like I only knew what was going on because I had read a book. I watched the movie with a friend who was unfamiliar with the book and found myself having to explain some things that were not depicted clearly. Additionally, I noticed many scenes from the book completely skipped over in the movie. But hey, I understand that a good chunk of scenes are removed in most adaptations of books. But considering that the duration of the movie was well over 2 hours long, I'd expect most scenes to appear in the movie. Removing that many scenes made the movie seem like it was rushed to produce, which is not a good look, considering they began developing the movie in 2019. Finally, the marketing of this film has been controversial. Blake Lively and author Colleen Hoover have been receiving backlash and have been under scrutiny for the way they have marketed the film. After the great success of Barbie and Oppenheimer last summer, it seemed like they were trying to recreate similar vibes and tried making it the A movie of the summer, which backfired, considering the seriousness of this subject. We can observe Blake Lively's frivolity and carelessness to the subject. By the way, she told viewers watching the movie to wear your florals as if it was a rom-com film, in addition to discussing trivial things in interviews like the costume huming, which were questionable. It appears that this was just no more than a quick money grab for her. In addition, it is unfortunate that the drama taking place amongst the cast has been receiving more attention than the movie itself. Overall, the movie was not terrible, but it also was not as good as I had anticipated. This movie had the potential to be sensational and educate people, but instead, most of the attention has been shifted to the bad marketing and the drama between the cast. The book, and now the film, has always flirted with a problematic undercurrent, one that glosses over, if not romanticizes, domestic violence, marketed as a love triangle involving a young florist named Lily Blossom Bloom. I'm not making this up. A surgeon named Ryla and her brooding childhood friend, Atlas. The story veers dangerously close to portraying abuse in a sympathetic light. Colleen's writing isn't just so parts harmful, particularly for her young, impressionable audience. The romance she promises in both the book and the film's promotions, aided by Blake Lively's overly floral fashion choices and her refusal to address the core theme, puts Ryle's early violent behavior in a let's-wait-and-see category that no one should find themselves promoting. Speaking of the film, the big screen adaptation had all the potential to be great, but ended up as one long series of letdowns. First on the list, casting Blake as Lily. The character was supposed to be a naive 23-year-old redhead. Instead, we get Blake, whose only contributions to the role seem to be a lot of unnecessary lip-biting, laughing, and dead-eyed. That said, credit where it's due. The casting team did a bang-up job on the rest of the characters. Is Blair, who plays a younger Lily, is practically a carbon copy of Blake's version down to the mole on her cheek. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were the same person, just plucked from different timelines. Blake's carefree attitude towards the film's heavy subject matter while promoting the movie is a head-scratcher. As someone who used to be a fan, I'm baffled by how she could tell viewers to grab your friends and wear your florals as if this were just another summer rom-com. Meanwhile, in interviews, she dodges any serious questions about domestic violence and instead prattles on about costumes and, of course, her husband. It's hard not to see this as a quick paycheck for her rather than a genuine passion project. What's unfortunate is that the drama happening off-screen is getting more attention than the film itself, which, if handled properly, could have been a vehicle for a powerful message. Now, onto the film's biggest sin. It's utterly confusing if you haven't read the book. There were moments in the movie where I found myself nodding along only because I'd already read the source material. This insider-only knowledge approach alienates anyone who is walking in blind. Add to that the fact that many key scenes from the book didn't make the cut, and you're left with a movie that's practically unintelligible to the uninitiated, while the book with all its flaws managed to ensulcum boy meets girl, boy charms girl, and so on. But as the story unfolds and Rhee's traumatic past is revealed, the film takes a misguided turn, trying to make him a more sympathetic character. The goal was for viewers to fall for Rye just as Lily does, so they'd be just as intended impact as Lost. I'd also love to have a word with the music supervisor responsible for this mishmash of well-known tunes, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.